All right, we are live and back again with Sir Brian the Craftsman, aka Brian Christensen from barlowherbal.com. And the first time we tried to do this live, it didn't quite work. So welcome back to another episode of Wellness Unplugged. Sometimes we have to unplug the device and plug it back in again to get things to work correctly. Brian is my American Doppelganger, hailing from Salt Lake City, Utah, otherwise known as Utah. And this man is a man of the mountains. He goes out and he finds wild herbs and turns it into amazing health tinctures. And he does a great Scottish accent in addition to being my American Doppelganger.
I'm honored. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a blessing to be here with Sir John the Legendary.
Yes, it sounds so much better when you say it that way. You know, and Brian, you got a bit of a backstory going on here, and we've mentioned a little bit in the description of the video, but you said you grew up overweight, depressed, anxious, riddled with like social anxiety, a military brat, meaning I guess you got shifted around as one or both of your parents were in the military, and even fell into like alcohol, drug addiction. So there's a lot of struggles in your background. What do you feel comfortable sharing with your backstory here?
Yeah, I mean, just like that. I mean, when I was born in a military hospital in Kentucky, and just moved around a lot. Not a ton actually, but when I was 4 or 5, we moved to Germany. So that was that was cool. That was really cool. And then when I was 8, we moved back to the United States. We lived in California, and I was, a young man. I was like starting junior high, and had some good friends, and things were going well. And then my parents separated, and we moved to Salt Lake City. So, as I've kind of, analyzed it, that's sort of, I kind of like took a nosedive socially, and I was riddled with anxiety. It was, not only was the divorce of my parents a shock, we never saw it coming.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of saw that as like, as sort of a, I don't know, turning point, I guess. I mean, I was socially isolated. I don't know. I don't know if I was under socialized as a kid or what. You know who Jordan Peterson is?
Sure do. Yep.
Yeah, he talks about, get your child socialized by the time they're 4. I heard him talk about that recently, and I was like, maybe that was kind of part of where things started to kind of go off course for me. But I don't know. It's kind of know what's going on, but who knows? But it's so I was a lonely camper, man, all the way throughout high school. I didn't really have a lot of friends. I felt isolated. I was depressed. I didn't really do the things I wanted to do. I wussed out trying out for the basketball team. I was afraid to take my shirt off. I was fat. I was always self-conscious about my weight, in elementary school, high school, junior high. And then that sort of blossomed into a relationship with alcohol, unhealthy relationship with alcohol.
Rather flowery language is blossomed into a relationship with alcohol.
Ugly, horrible relationship with alcohol came to be that magical thing. But I started. Yeah, dude. I remember right out of high school, I was a cook in an Italian restaurant. And I would steal fifths of liquor from the liquor cabinet. They had a whole room, a liquor room with all the liquor. And that's kind of where my problem started. I had a cook buddy who was of age, and he would go buy me, the big half-gallon plastic jugs of vodka. And then I was smoking pot as well. I discovered pot at like 16. And then like in my early 20s, I was living in California. I was addicted to meth for a while. I snorted it. I never smoked it. Not that matters. Just a fun detail there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. It's probably the worst.
Yeah. Just to be clear, we're certainly not recommending that you adopt these things.
Just being real and raw. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were kind of really in this downward spiral, engaged in a lot of very, very unhelpful behaviors that were probably trashing your health.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted the turnaround? What was like the thing that, or maybe there wasn't just one thing, but how
Yeah.
do you like, how do you dig yourself out of a spiral like this?
Yeah. Luckily, I was able to get out of the meth thing after a couple months. A lot of people get sucked way further into that, and yeah, that can be devastating. So luckily, I never got too deep into the hard drugs, but the alcohol struggle was the enduring struggle. Cannabis was always there. I don't. Most people would agree with me. I think that cannabis isn't nearly as harmful as alcohol. Not
Yeah.
nearly as harmful. You can abuse cannabis, yes, but um, so yeah, man, I was always a streaky drinker. I would have periods of sobriety. I would go a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then when I tripped up, oh man, it was on and it was dark. It was bad. I wouldn't like just go to the bar and have a good time. I would just get a fifth of liquor by myself and just drank till I passed out, and then I would more often than not, it would turn into a multi-day event, 2, 3,
Right.
4
Yeah.
days, sometimes a week. Twice I've wound up in detox clinics. Um, I went one time. I went to a live-in rehab facility for 6 weeks. That was extremely helpful. I did have some slip-ups after that, but that was very pivotal, very pivotal. Like I said, it wasn't a straight line to sobriety after that.
Yeah.
But and
And
then
I think that's
another key.
important to
Go ahead.
kind of highlight. Just important to highlight that I think maybe there's this idea out there that like you make a decision to go sober and all of a sudden you're good. The reality is, and it's probably some there's some crossover even in terms of people's weight loss journeys here a little bit, in that making the decision to change doesn't mean you're not going to slip up again. And I think it's important to
Yes.
highlight that because I've heard it. The stats are something like, for people who try to quit smoking, the average smoker tries 6 times before they're successful at kicking the habit for good. And so, and imagine for the average drinker, it could be even more than that. Was there any individual in your life? Because part of the question that comes to mind here is, okay, you're going through this pretty destructive lifestyle here.
Hmm.
How did you make ends meet? Like, how did you like somewhat hold it together?
Yeah. Uh, my saving grace was I always kind of knew how to get a job because I would often lose jobs. I could keep jobs for a period of time, but yeah, I've gone through a number of jobs, so I was always really good at rebounding and going to get the job. But I did go into pretty heavy debt as a young man. Um, it was like every night. I When I lived in California, we would just drink beer, and I would always, add liquor, and people would be smoking pot left and right. Some people would be doing cocaine, but it was all the time. So like, and on top of that, I was working and making okay money. I was only paying $400 in rent, and so I managed my money poorly, but I blew it all on, junk food and alcohol and pot and stupid things I didn't need. It's so easy to. So yes, I did. I was financially irresponsible to go along with that, but I was always able to keep a job and work, and I got that cleaned up. Um, but yeah, I mean, the last 7 years have been amazing. You know,
Yeah.
um, I haven't been 100% sober in those last 7 years. I've had a couple slip ups, but it's gotten so much better and keeps getting better over time. And
Yeah.
one more thing that was kind of pivotal, that was a huge, I think, that took me to another level of keeping my sobriety, was a book called The Easy Way to Quit Drinking by a guy named Alan Carr. Now, a lot of people who struggle with addiction might scoff at that title, The Easy Way to Quit Drinking. That might piss a lot of people off. My tip would be just to read it with an open mind, because it's a tool, right? We look at, like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
we want the answer. What's the answer? What's the key here? Why can't there be a bunch of tools we can use? That's the key in my book, is find as many tools as possible to help you. So it's a beautiful read. It really reshapes the way you look at alcohol as someone who struggles with an addiction. So I would point that out as well.
And so then I would ask the question, and I think I kind of know the answer to this, but I really appreciate your openness and vulnerability and willingness to kind
Yeah.
of share this. So, as someone who struggled with addiction, is that struggle always with you?
Yes. As far as it just manifests differently, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I can be impulsive. I can be impatient. I can be a little obsessive. So it will just manifest in different ways. So I have to channel it into working out, being being the best version of myself. As long as I channel that energy in me, because I believe it's energy, it's an intense energy inside me that if I channel correctly is the most amazing thing. But if not, it can take me down if it goes unregulated. So it's, whatever it is, a combination of certain genetics, or
Yeah. I mean,
whatever.
there's
Yeah.
things going on in the brain that there are people with that we know that there are people with greater propensities towards addiction, because of the way that the brain is structured. And it's something that I've never struggled with drug or alcohol addiction. Mine was food, but really, I mean, I was treating food in a very, very destructive way, a very compulsive way, a very out of control way for a number of years. And I could sort of conceal it because food is a little bit more socially acceptable, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And so I can understand like that need to channel that energy somewhere. And so you had a few sort of pivotal moments in your journey here. You turned a corner. You said the last 7 years, by and large, have been amazing. There's been the occasional slip ups. Are you aware of like what is it that could potentially trigger a slip up for you? And does that awareness of these sort of potential obstacles help you to stay sober?
Um, Man, that's a tough one to answer. That's really tough.
I've been told that I ask tough questions from time to time.
Yeah, it's man,
Because I think,
like,
and why I ask that question is that I'm trying to tap into sort of your very human experience, because I think it's important for people to understand that, like, if they're struggling with something like this, one, that they're not alone, um, and two, there are ways, and it's not that you're going to have all of the answers. I don't ask that
right,
question thinking that you have the penultimate answer for anybody struggling with addiction, but rather to give people something to chew on, something to think about, something
sure,
to reflect on, and go, I wonder if this tool could help. Because I think you expressed something really valuable when you said, um, like the book, The Easy Way to Quit Drinking. And you said it was by Alan Carr. Did I get that right?
yeah,
Yeah, that was a really instrumental tool in helping you to kind of break free from this. Um, I wonder
yeah.
sometimes if it feels like there's always something kind of in the background that you're aware of that you have to manage, because if you don't, that there could be another sort of slip up. And so, you know, because I recognize this in myself. There's certain I realize that I could still go down a destructive path. Like that propensity lies within me, and maybe I'll share a little bit of what I do, and that might help you. And in terms of, so I have what I call my emotionally compelling reasons. These are the reasons, because the decisions to do something destructive, whether for me, whether it's going on like a reckless sort of binge eating junk food spree, it's really this impulsive emotional decision. And so in order to counter that, I need to have what I call my emotionally compelling reasons. So when that urge or that impulse appears in my brain, it's not that I want it there, it's not that I welcome it, but it is there, and I think I'm able to manage it and navigate it differently. But one of the ways that I counter it is I reflect on the reasons why I don't want to go down that path again. So I have two very powerful ones, being my wife and my son. And I connect myself to those reasons whenever I feel the urge or the impulse to carry out a destructive behavior, or break into a destructive behavior pattern. And the desire to be a present father, the desire to be a present husband, is stronger than the desire to go down that path. And so that's one of the things that helps me.
Absolutely. I guess one thing I could say is something that's been very helpful for me is to realize that well, just had a brain fart here. Hold on. Okay, is to realize that there are going to be uncomfortable and painful moments in life,
Yeah.
and to find a friendship with that. There's a beauty in the dark side, and I'm not saying you have to, you know, prefer it, but without the dark, light would not be possible. So so that will help you sort of develop a mindset. It's about the mindset and having that mental toughness and that sort of an altruistic, stoic, I guess stoic would be a better word,
Yeah.
approach to certain realities of life. People, your loved
Yeah.
ones are going to pass, your pets are going to pass, people are going to get injured, people are going to get sick. Th- Financial woes could happen. I mean, there's a million, you're going to have to run into those. And so just being as realistic as possible without, stressing and being anxious about that stuff. But just like,
Yeah.
realizing that, because there's a lot of hype in this world today and a lot of hype and just like blah blah, it's like, and that's great. Like positivity is the way to go, and we need to use negativity as a tool and not let it control our mindset and how we go about life. But at the same time, we need to be realistic and develop a mental toughness and a sort of stoic attitude. So that, I guess, that's the best sort of answer I can give you as to like how to prepare for a trigger, something you think might, like, last
Yeah.
time I slipped up, my girlfriend went out of town for a week. It
Yeah.
was mischievous. Yeah, it wasn't really mischievous. It was just like, hey, no harm, no foul. I'm by myself. But I drank way too much. It was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
stupid. So
So I think you've highlighted something really, really important here because again, I can see a lot of parallels between this and the struggle with weight loss and the struggle with our relationship with food. And it's making peace with the fact that life involves hard moments, life involves dark moments, life involves painful moments. And one of the things I think that drives us to try to escape from this is this idea that something is wrong when we encounter this in life, or that these
yeah,
elements of life
yeah. How do we
don't
fix
belong
this?
there.
Like, yeah, how do I? Yeah, and it's just not. It's just part of the dance. It's the yin
Yes,
or the yang,
part,
whichever.
it's,
Yeah,
it's part of the dance of life. I like to say, yeah, without sadness, there is no joy.
right.
Without, and so, like you said, without darkness, there is no light. So these, if we can accept that these difficult moments in life, pardon me, these difficult moments in life are part of what gives life its color and its meaning, and it's where we find like our depth of character when we're really tested. Because the good times don't necessarily test us; they don't really show us what we're made of, and so just making peace with the fact that life is going to be hard. And when we kind of let go of this expectation or this idea that something is wrong when we're going through a hard experience, that something is wrong when we're in pain or in suffering, like in a sense, yes, it is, but it's a part of life, an inescapable part of life, then
It's
maybe
necessary. Yeah,
we're less inclined to turn to these destructive coping mechanisms to navigate.
yeah. And if you think about it, what really, really makes somebody feel fulfilled? It's not looking at a challenge and turning the other way and running, or going around a challenge. It's walking through the challenge. And yeah, it can feel sucky at first if you fail this challenge, whoop your butt, but you still can hold your head high and feel good about yourself. But a lot of times you make it through the challenge, you walk through the toughness and the pain. I mean, if you think about it, would life be any fun? I mean, what do we enjoy? We like watching people fight. We like watching people compete, go through challenges. That's what we like to see. We like to see greatness. We like to see. I mean, that's how you mold and become better. And then what happens is you keep going, right? And you
Yeah.
gain a level of toughness, and that keeps going. And so all that other stuff that's easier and below that level of toughness, that becomes even easier. And so it's just kind of, everything flows that much better.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of cultivating mental resilience. Um,
Yeah.
and so I actively try to do this in my life, and it looks relatively simple in effect in my life. And I say when I share this, I think it's also important to understand that you need the capacity to do something like this as well. So for me, one of the simple ways I do it is I have a cold shower every day, and
Hmm.
a cold shower is uncomfortable.
That's
Uh,
brutal, man. That's
yeah,
brutal.
yeah, I'm doing like a 10-minute cold shower every day,
10
and
minutes.
sometimes what I will do, because it's like me versus the cold,
Yeah.
and every time and it's not that I start warm and turn down. No, I turn it ice cold and I just step in. and it's uncomfortable. My brain doesn't like it. Probably the first 4 minutes are the most difficult when my brain's like, get out of here. So it's like me versus my mind in this moment. But I want to cultivate the ability to remain calm in the presence of discomfort, in the presence of like my primal nervous system, my animal brain going, get out of here. What are you doing this? And
Right.
every time, like, I have a timer, and the music at the end of the timer is kind of this triumphant music. And every time it goes off, like, I feel this sense of accomplishment, like I won again. And sometimes I will defiantly stay in the cold shower for like an extra minute or 2 minutes, up to like 12 minutes, to say that, like, I win, you don't get to win. And so it's a simple way of testing my resilience and trying to cultivate that. Do you have anything that you kind of put yourself through or challenge yourself with to try to help to cultivate that resilience?
I take cold showers, not every day, not 10 minutes, but I do love the cold shower challenge. That is beast mode that you do it for 10 minutes, man. That is, whew. I mean, but like after a certain point, it's like, it feels good, right? It wakes everything up and gets you all up.
There certainly is an element of feeling very alert and energized after that. And the cool thing is, like, if you have like a super hot shower and you step out and you feel really cold when you step out of the shower and you want to shiver, I never feel that stepping out of the shower. I step out and the room feels amazingly warm. So it's kind of like the opposite. Now, that being said, I do have a couple rules around it. One being, if I start to shiver, like genuinely shiver, I will step out. If I didn't if I didn't hit the 10-minute mark, doesn't matter. If I start to shiver, I step out. Okay, that says, okay, I'm dropping my core temperature enough right now. If I start to cramp, feel lightheaded, or anything funky starts happening, like, I don't force myself to continue. But I won't step out just because my brain says this is uncomfortable, you shouldn't be here. I do this because I don't, like, food for me was a way of medicating my trauma. It was a way for me to escape all the uncomfortable things that were happening in my head. And I want to be stronger than the urge to escape the discomfort. So I want to be stronger than the urge to turn back to food again, and so on. And so, I think maybe you have something like this as well, where you want to be stronger than the urge to drink and dive into what, alcohol would provide for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a big helper for me with alcohol and food is to not give it too much energy and too much power. You were very instrumental. When I met you, the past, as long as I can remember, I've been like, just ever so often, okay, let's go. It's Monday's coming up. Let's start keto. Let's start this exercise program. Let's do it. Only, put all this strictness and limitations on the diet, only to just, bam, 3 days later, face down in a pile of pizza boxes, freaking Snickers wrappers everywhere. You know the deal, bro.
Yeah, I've been there, man. Pizza and Snickers, like my two, like, Snickers is my favorite chocolate bar, and pizza is like my favorite trigger food.
Yeah, see, we are the same person. My Canadian twin.
Yeah, so
that was helpful, man. Like, meeting you, and you're like, dude, stop dieting. Like, stop it. And it's I've been having that attitude lately, and just trying to be sensible and smart and watching portions and all that stuff. It's been extremely helpful.
Awesome. I'm really, really glad to hear that. And
yeah,
another one of my resilience tests, I guess that's what I call this, and I think ultimately I'm trying to put these pieces in place because maybe I'm going to have a program that I offer people, like, let's really test your resilience. Let's see where you're at. Like, is I stopped consuming sugar, other than, or maybe I should say added sugars. Like, I've had a few bananas, had a few prunes one time. I've had some raspberries and blueberries from time to time. But really, I said, I'm gonna stop consuming sugar because I want to see what happens. I want to see what happens. I want to see what I encounter, what I experience. Like, do I develop cravings? Do I try and, do I have urges to, I just wanted to see where I'm at with my relationship with food, and sugar is like a key sort of destructive element to it. And I think probably because my 40th birthday is coming up next year, I was like, I really want to approach this intelligently in one sense, and kind of let go of this idea that I'm young. Like, I still have youth on my side in one sense, but I don't have the freedom to, like, just trash my health. And so trying to take a little more balanced and mature perspective, like, it's harder to bounce back if I trash my health again.
Yeah. But, like, in answer to your question, I don't really have a routine to test my resiliency. It's a lot of freestyle. Just if there's something I really don't want to do, I make that first on my list. I
Eat the
eat the
big frog
frog.
first. Yeah, there you
Frog,
go.
you know.
Yeah, if you got to eat the frog,
So
eat it first, man. So now I wanted to
yeah,
get into this because I think maybe one of the other things that's been a bit of an anchor for you is Barlow Herbal, which is your family's
yes,
business creating herbal tinctures, and you call yourself a bit of a herbal craftsman. I love the idea of you being this woodsman. I picture you putting on this flannel shirt, maybe bringing an axe with you or a pickaxe or something, and going into the mountainous forests and locating this amazing herb that I want to call lamatium, but that's not the correct it's not the correct pronunciation. But I feel like that's how it should be. That's how it should be pronounced with some sort of like high British accent. We go into the forest, but then again, I feel like it should be maybe said with like a heavy Scottish accent. We go into the forest, laddie, and we're gonna get some lamatium, something like that. And that was really a terrible Scottish. I apologize to I apologize to any Scotsman who's listening to my horrible imitation.
oh, they're dying right now, laddie. They're dying. That
Yeah,
wasn't very good either.
yeah, I know.
Mine's not perfect either.
No, I have to get in the right mindset if I'm
It
going to
can
do
be a
like a
tough one.
Scottish one. Yeah, yeah. But tell me about lamatium and sort of how you encountered it.
Yeah. So I've been taking root medicine ever since I was in the womb.
Okay.
So root medicine is what I called it as a kid. That's our LDM 100 tincture. It's a liquid extract of just lomatium. Lomatium dissectum multifida, excuse me. Lomatium dissectum multifida. That's its scientific name.
That's a big name. I think I'm just going to type the word in the comments here and make it a little bit easier.
Lomatium dissectum multifida. It's pretty phonetically sound, but I can
If I
spell
just
it if
put
you like.
lamatium dissectum, I think people will get the idea. And if they go to barlowherbal.com,
Yeah,
they can learn a bit more about that. And let's just show them that. So if they go to barlowherbal.com, is there somewhere on here products LDM 100 lomatium?
yeah.
So this is where people can learn a little bit more about this kind of stuff. I was hoping there would be like a story or a picture of you digging up lomatium root or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But as of yet, I don't see it on the website. But that definitely needs to be there. A picture of you digging up
That's a good idea.
Yeah, like hand
There is some
harvesting.
footage.
Do you with lomatium, and you're going to tell me more about it anyways, but do you go and harvest it by hand yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So I did a couple trips this year. So I live in the north half of Utah, Salt Lake City. So there is lots of lomatium that grows in this area. There's some nearby lomatium that grows on a hiking trail, but it's U.S. forest land, so we can't dig there. So
You could, but you might have some problems.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can't remove plant like in volume. You can
Right.
I
Okay.
don't care if you take a couple flowers or whatever off of U.S. forest land. But yeah, we harvested out in the wild. We used to harvest more in Utah, but nowadays it's primarily Idaho. It's amazing, man. It's very challenging. We drive up on these windy dirt roads out in the middle of nowhere. We find private property and we get permission to use it a lot of times. And then what we do is we take a railroad pick. So it's a pick that's skinny. It's much skinnier. Both ends are skinnier than a normal pick, which has the skinnier end and then the big fat end, which is like
Right.
usually
Yeah.
fat.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fat end on a railroad pick is much skinnier. So that's just personal preference. You can dig with any pickaxe. So you got to drive. You locate the root by the stalks, and then you go about 6 to 8 inches above the root, and you drive the pickaxe into the ground. Sort of the process is a kind of pry. Once you're under it, you kind of tug on the pickaxe, you give it a little pry, and then right then you should be able to know if it's loose enough to be able to just keep prying and pop up, which is ideal. But there's a lot of rocks. There's rocky areas too. So oftentimes you have to dig area around it. You have to kind of unwedge rocks that are kind of wedged into each other, and then the roots growing into it. So it can be very backbreaking. Extremely rewarding though. I'm not even being funny. It's spiritual for me. I go up there and you're just up in this beautiful forest up in the Rocky Mountains, and we collect in the fall. So last time I went, there were beautiful leaves and colors from the trees. So we dig it out of the ground. We put it in gunny sacks, just burlap sacks,
Yep.
they use for coffee or potatoes, and then we haul them down the mountain, drag them down the mountain. We take them home and we cut them up. We let them cure on racks in a temperature controlled area for at least a month, and
Yep.
then they are ready to grind up and put into cane alcohol for tincture, liquid extraction. We do capsules and skincare products out of it as well. Make a couple other tinctures. We have a tincture called vermicide, which is if you have a giardia problem or some sort of microorganism like that, a microparasite, microscopic parasite. That one's got LDM in it as well as blue tansy. Um, so
So this is quite a thing that you go through, and you
yeah,
definitely should have like footage of you actually harvesting this stuff. Is it something that could be cultivated like agriculturally on farmland, or does it need to grow in the wild?
yeah, it hasn't been successfully cultivated. Attempts were made by my grandfather and his colleagues back in the day, which is where my family got this. My grandfather was a doctor of medicinal botany. He got his doctorate from BYU. For those of you who don't know, Brigham Young University here in a town called Provo.
Yeah.
Um, and he developed LDM 100, the liquid extract of lamation. And so, yeah, it's what was I talking about? What was
Well,
your
we
question?
were talking about if you could grow it
Oh,
agriculturally,
right.
or if it has to be like
Yeah.
wild grown. And
So not yet. We're talking about setting up some experiments. Um, I think it's possible. I think what we need to do, which I don't know how thoroughly they went into it, if they did soil analysis or anything like that. Because the climate, we know what climate it grows in.
right, yeah. So
But I think a soil analysis is needed.
right, okay. Or something could become, because you think about like lavender and some of these other herbs that you see that have been successfully turned into, excuse me, mass scale production.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is there anyone else out there that's making use of lamatium, or like how did
Mm-hmm.
your grandfather find out about this? And like I'm just curious because I'd never heard of this until you mentioned it to me.
Yeah. So let me take you back to the beginning of how far back I know. So lamatium was used by a Native American tribe, the Washoe Indians, which were in the area of Carson, what is now Carson City, Nevada.
Okay.
So, and of course, the white man's going to come in and ruin everything, right? And take and steal ideas and stuff from the Native American, right? That's our history. So, a white doctor from San Francisco, Dr. Krebs, he was commissioned by the federal government to go check on the washout tribe during
Okay.
the Spanish flu epidemic of 1917 to 1918. So he went down there and he realized that nobody was dying. They had a zero death count from the Spanish flu in
Okay.
this washout tribe. And so he obviously dug into it and he realized they were using lamation.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the story. So my grandfather, Dr. Max Gerald Barlow, he worked with Dr. Krebs' son, Dr. Krebs Jr. I forget their first names,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Okay.
The Krebses. And so Krebs Jr. worked with my grandfather, and he developed LDM 100.
Okay.
He started his own company. He was totally renegade. He did it all cash or check. He didn't have any accounts. He didn't pay any taxes. He was a wild man. It was like the wild, wild west. He would go to Mexico to get his alcohol for dirt
Yeah.
cheap, and he would bring a bunch of grain alcohol. We use alcohol from organic cane, but he used
Yeah.
grain based. Not, I mean, I don't know how much gluten is in alcohol, but that's what he used back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. So, do the Native Americans like still use it? Because I mean, a lot of discoveries go something like this, where there is, a group of people that are indigenous to an area, and they've learned that this certain thing has medicinal properties. And so, how did the Native American people consume it?
They would make preparations out of it. They would essentially do what we do is they would chop it up into slices and or chunks, and then they would hang it to dry. We lay it on racks. They would hang it.
Like how long is a lomatium root?
It varies. So like the smaller, younger roots resemble like dark brown carrots. They look
Okay.
like dark brown carrots. And then I'll have to send you some pictures, man.
You got to get this stuff on your website, man, because this like there's a cool story
Yeah.
behind this, but like actually seeing this in action, like going and harvesting it and that kind
No,
of
that's
stuff.
some great ideas. Yeah.
Seeing it hang up and growing, because you want people to know the story behind this, you know, because
Yeah.
you might hear like these like really cool testimonials about this stuff, and like how do you think like lomatium has helped you?
Oh man, like every time. So I rarely get sick, and then when I do get sick, it only lasts like 48 hours tops.
Yeah.
You know, I take Lomation preventatively, not that often, maybe once a week.
Right. Okay.
You know, I'm pretty healthy. Still got some weight I want to lose, but I eat pretty clean. I'm very active. I make sure and get all my nutrients, blah blah blah. But yeah, man, I get over sickness like that, and I rarely get sick, dude. Like people, my buddies and people are like, "Oh man, this is my one or two flus for the year," and I'm just like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't happen to me, man. It's like once every
Right.
three
Okay.
years is probably my average."
Right. So lomatium has, as you mentioned, like antiviral, antibacterial, sort of antimicrobial properties.
Yeah,
Have there been, which makes me curious, and like, have there been any attempts by pharmaceutical companies to create a synthetic analog of this and turn it into a pharmaceutical product?
not that I know of.
That's interesting. So
I'm
it's
kind of
still,
worried. I'm kind of worried about something like that happening.
well,
Not really, but
because I mean, if you look at like aspirin, it was salicylic acid from willow bark that got converted to ASA, which
Mhm.
is more readily bioavailable. But it was, you know, seeing people use willow bark. That's just kind of like one example. Um,
Here's
so
the thing, John. Here's the problem, though. They won't do it because Lomation works. They don't want people to get healthy. They want to keep people sick, and they want to keep selling them drugs.
yeah,
So that's my personal opinion. People out there may disagree with me, but I'm not worried about it, or I don't think it will happen because I would actually, if it were done by like an ethical company for the right reasons, I would actually encourage it because there's not, as of right now, I can't dig enough Lomation. There are other people out there, you know, it's very small, but there are other people out there who know about Lomation, who dig it, who harvest it, who make
it's
tinctures
funny
and
who dig it. Yeah,
yeah,
can you dig it?
and you dig, but
Yeah,
I don't think so, man, because they no,
it's
they I
so
don't think
is
no.
the like mechanism of action known? Like, do we know like what specific, if there's specific compounds, like organic compounds within the tinctures? Do we know like what are the bioactive compounds in lomatium root and the potential mechanisms of action?
Yeah, there are resins in the plant and tannins that are believed to be responsible, providing an alkalinity and plus the raw materials to the body. It's this perfect storm of raw materials, and it has this amazing ability to alkalize your body, and bring it to a homeostasis. So yeah, tannins and the resins are the two big plant components. There's some saponins and some other stuff in there, but
Right, because like what I'm thinking about is I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get us in trouble on Facebook if I even mention this word. I'm like, say something like
use
ivermectin,
code.
something
Right.
like horse paste, um,
Or,
ivermectin. That's been so controversial around our current pandemic,
mhm.
and I think part of the controversy is the fact there's no money that can be made from it. But there are some specific actions known around it, like its ability to bind to the spike protein. It has some inflammatory properties and so forth, and so. Or something like quercetin, which again I think is something that can bind to the spike protein and in essence deactivate the virus and thus reduce the viral load that somebody's currently experiencing. So there
Right.
are some of these compounds, and quercetin is like a natural compound found in like citrus fruits and things like that. So there are some of these compounds out there where we know sort of the specific mechanism of action. I guess that's why I was kind of curious, is if we know, like if it's because a lot of viruses have something like a spike protein that helps them, that's like the key to get them into the cell, depending on the type of virus it is. And so if there's sort of any known mechanism of action, and um, I've been using the Immunity Boost from Barlow Herbal. You sent me some. I still have a good half bottle because it seems like it's really potent stuff. Like you don't need a lot of it for it to be effective. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very potent. Um, the mechanism of action is the LDM and its components facilitate the production of macrophages, which for those of you who don't know are your body's cleanup crew.
The
They can
Pac-Man.
go they huh
The Pac-Man.
exactly. They go through and they have little antennas or whatever that and they can put their antenna on something like, oh, we don't recognize this, get it out of here. So it
Yeah. Oh, they
increases.
gobble it up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it eats it up and digests it and eliminates it. So that's what we know about it. It increases production of macrophages. I can't get more specific than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, a little bit does go a long way. You don't need much. It's very concentrated.
Yeah, and so like I've been taking Immunity Boost every day, and I started with a really low dose, and I think I started with like 5 drops a day. And Immunity Boost is what 25% limation, if I understand right, give or take.
Yeah, 25%.
Right. So I started with 5 drops a day, and now I can do up to 50. I've tried up to 50 drops a day, and I haven't developed any rash. But it is a known potential side effect if someone for the first time taking Limation where they might experience a bit of a rash. And I've read some kind of horror stories, but I think people just dove like they're like, oh, this stuff's great, and took a huge dose of it, and their body was totally unprepared for it. Do we
Yeah.
know like what it is that could potentially trigger a rash within people the first time they're trying to take it?
Yes. We have a ton of evidence pointing to the leading theory that it's basically just an elimination overload. Like I said, those macrophages are going crazy, and it's not just unwanted microbes like harmful bacteria, viruses, and fungi that they're getting rid of. They're getting rid of toxins, pesticides, maybe even heavy metals and things like that. Just all carcinogens. So if the amount of elimination detoxing that you have to do, if your liver and your kidneys can't keep up with that load, then it comes out through your skin. It's got nowhere else to go, or
Okay,
it
yeah.
just sends it through your skin. So it's just an elimination process through the skin, which can be uncomfortable and itchy. It can cause some symptoms like some cold and flu-like symptoms along the way. Yeah, it's not fun. A lot of people will get mild, but a lot of people will get a little more intense, intermediate to heavy rash, and it can be probably itchiness is the biggest complaint.
Yeah, and it would
Um,
last for like maybe 5 days or something like that.
yeah, kind of the average is 9 days,
Okay.
but yeah, on the low end, you get it for 3 to 5 days. On the
Because like
high end, 3 weeks.
I was really diligent when starting out with it, and continue to be so. That I took activated charcoal, um, dandelion root tea, some liver support, so things like that. And so I kind of gave my body a little bit of extra help in the process, in the detoxification process, and I took it nice and slow. 5 drops a day for 5 days,
And
and then
that's the way to do
and then I bumped it up to maybe 10 drops a day for 5 days. And then I got up to like maybe 15 drops a day. Or I think I was even doing it like 10 days at a time. Like I took it real slow and
it.
just gradually sort of picked it up, continuing to provide like liver and kidney support. And so I've had no experience of that, which is kind of nice. And you gave me some good advice around that, and just kind of reaffirmed some of the things that I was doing, which is really, really awesome. So maybe to bring this full circle, during some of your more destructive years, were you still consuming limation?
Actually, no. Like from ages like out of high school up until about the age of 30, I probably or maybe 26, 27. I actually joined the Utah Army National Guard at the age of 26. That I still had problems. Still struggled. That didn't by any means. But no, I always used it as a kid. I totally took it for granted. I didn't realize how special it was as a kid. But
Right.
then in my kind of late 20s, early 30s, I got back on board. I started working here at Barlow Herbal when I was, I want to say 32. So, and then, yeah, I kind of got back into taking herbs regularly.
Nice.
Yeah.
And since then, did you have to kind of go through a bit of a detoxification from sort of it's basically all the abuse that your body took?
Yeah, I didn't. But like since I had been taking Lamation most of my life, I didn't have to worry about a rash or anything like that. Um, and it was a gradual process. I've had some success with, crash diets and things like that. But my successes with staying sober, beating alcoholism, and my continued work with uh, keeping keeping the food at bay. It's been there never has been there's been a couple, like I described earlier, a couple of key moments which kind of launched me into a higher trajectory, but it's been a lot. It's been a slugfest, man. But I love it. I love it.
Hey, that's where character's built, isn't it? Isn't a slugfest. And so, well, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love the information you've provided. I think, checking out Barlow Herbal would be like a really awesome thing for a lot of people. Let's go to this screen here. There we go. You're not totally eliminated.
Yeah, buddy.
And I look forward to seeing when you update it with some videos of like harvesting lamatium. I think it sounds like a really like cool compound. I'm excited to try LDM 100 and sort of, I'll probably take the same sort of gradual approach to it. But, I think I've been taking Immunity Boost for probably close to 2 months, and I'm like maybe only halfway through a bottle. Once you've kind of, is there a period of time that people should maybe use it on a daily basis, and then once that period has passed, they could use it prophylactically or preventatively? How would you approach that?
Yeah. If you don't have any systemic viral issues that you know about, like you don't have Epstein-Barr or any sort of issues you need to deal with, if you're otherwise healthy that you know of, I suggest people run through 2 ounces of Immunity Boost and 2 to 4 ounces, at least 2. I think 2 ounces, plenty of LDM 100 as sort of an upfront detox for the body, and then from there you can just keep LDM 100 or the capsule version, which is called C's Plus. You can keep that on hand for you when you get sick. Some people choose to take it preventatively. My advice, if you take it preventatively, is not to take it every day. Just take it once a week. You can take a fairly high dose too. You can do 50 to 100 drops of the tincture at a time. It's not gonna have any ill effects at that rate. And the capsules you can take, 6 to 8 in a day if you want. But it's up to you. But I would recommend taking it situationally if you're on an airplane, traveling, if you're going to a third world country, you're going to be more prone. If it's cold and flu season, it just depends. But anyone could benefit from taking it once or twice a week as a preventative.
Right. Awesome, man. Well, I super appreciate that because it's really, really helpful to kind of be aware of that. And so I think I'll go through a bottle of LDM 100 and then I'll move into more using it prophylactically. I just like saying that word. It's such a funny word, but it just means preventatively.
Wrap it up, John.
Yeah. So anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure. LDM sounds awesome. I'm excited for getting to try it. And I'm really glad that you were willing to come on here, share your story, be vulnerable, give people some hope. I think that's part of the reason why we want to share these stories is because it gives people hope when they realize, hey, I'm not alone in this struggle. I'm not a freak or I'm not weird for having this struggle. Yeah. It's a very significant part of just being human. And so thank you for coming on and sharing your story, man.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, John, for what you do and all the value you provide, man. You're a soldier, man. You have no idea how much value and strength, just additional support you've given to me with our friendship that we've developed here. So thanks for having me on, brother.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. So this wraps up another episode of Wellness Unplugged. Stay tuned for another one coming your way tomorrow. So Mondays and Tuesdays, we got Wellness Unplugged live broadcast on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. And then on Friday, we have another one we're called Wellness Unfiltered, which is a panel discussion with 3 or 4 coaches where we tackle some of the worst issues that are facing the health and fitness industry. We tear them down and we show you how to take back control of your health. So stay tuned for those coming. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you tomorrow.